We survived a volcano eruption, our last moments on the edge of death. I've been a volcanologist for almost 20 years. I've seen lava flows consume entire landscapes, felt the ground tremble beneath my feet more times than I can count, and spent nights staring at seismograph readings instead of sleeping. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Mauna Loa last week. I still can't believe I'm writing this. The setup. We arrived on the Big Island 2 weeks ago. Standard research expedition, data collection, thermal imaging, measuring gas emissions. We knew Mauna Loa had been active recently, but nothing suggested an imminent eruption. Minor tremors, typical stuff. We were a team of 6. Me 40 years old, leading this team, trying to keep my head straight. Dr. Julia Hayes, geochemist, brilliant but no nonsense, the only one who can drink Hawaiian coffee black without wincing. Luis Ortega, seismologist, optimist, always trying to play peacemaker when things get tense. Devin Marks, tech guy, drone expert, the reason we get cool thermal imaging instead of guessing. Hannah Lee, grad student, eager, maybe too eager but damn smart. Chris, except no, not this time. Chris wasn't with us. He should have been. We'd been in this field together for 15 years. He was my best friend, my brother in everything but blood. But 3 months ago he died on a research trip in Indonesia. Rockfall, a freak accident. 1 second he was there, cracking jokes, and the next gone. And I was supposed to just keep going. This was our first major trip without him, and it felt wrong, like walking with a phantom limb. 5 days into the trip, the data started getting weird. Seismic activity spiked overnight. Gas emissions tripled in volume. It wasn't adding up. Mauna Loa wasn't supposed to be this restless. Lewis was concerned but not panicked. Could be deep magma movement, he said. Doesn't mean an eruption is imminent. I nodded. I wanted to believe him. Then on the 7th day, we felt the first real quake. Not a minor tremor, a real quake, the kind that makes you instinctively brace yourself, even when you're standing on solid ground. Equipment rattled. Hannah yelped and grabbed onto the nearest table. Then just as quickly as it started, it stopped. A few seconds, that's all it took, but we all looked at each other, and I saw the same unspoken thought in their eyes. Something's wrong. The quake felt wrong, like a warning. We tried to shake it off. Lewis insisted it was just the normal seismic activity that happens when magma moves deep under the surface, but we all knew this wasn't just normal. We spent the next couple of hours trying to re-establish some kind of routine, checking the data, recalibrating instruments, but the tension in the air was thick. Julia kept eyeing the readings, her brow furrowed, and I could see the way her fingers tightened around her coffee cup, like she was bracing for something. It's not normal, she muttered under her breath. I didn't need to hear more. I knew what she meant. I knew exactly what we were all thinking, even if no one was willing to say it out loud. We were working on borrowed time. And that night we got our confirmation. We were finishing up for the day, starting to pack up the gear when the ground started rumbling again. This time it wasn't just a quake, it felt like the very core of the island was waking up. The walls of our research tent started shaking, and I heard the low, guttural growl of the volcano deep below. I knew this wasn't just another tremor. We need to leave, now. I don't remember who said it, it could have been me, but we all felt it at the same time, an instinctive, primal need to run. We packed up in a frantic rush. Lewis and Julia were trying to salvage what date they could. Hannah, bless her heart, was already halfway to the trucks with Devin in tow. Devin, of course, was already cursing under his breath, trying to get our drones back into the air for real-time imaging. But the ground beneath us wasn't waiting. A violent shake hit us like a punch to the gut, knocking me off my feet. The tent collapsed on top of me, trapping me for a split second, and I felt the weight of the world come down. I scrambled, pulling myself free, only to look up and see what I can only describe as an eruption of dust, rocks, and ash rising up from the volcano. It wasn't lava, not yet, but the air was thick with the promise of it. Get to the trucks, now. I didn't care that my voice cracked. I didn't care that I sounded like I was already losing my mind. I knew the eruption was coming. I knew we had minutes before things went from bad to worse. We reached the trucks in a chaotic blur of motion, the sounds of grinding rock and rumbling earth all around us. The ash cloud above us was thickening, blotting out the sun, and the air was choking, heavy with the smell of sulfur and heat. Devin was in the driver's seat of one truck, already trying to start the engine. Lewis and Julia were scrambling to get into the other. Hannah, still in a daze, looked back at the camp. What about the drones? She asked, her voice trembling. Forget the drones, I snapped. We need to get the hell out of here. I didn't have to say anything else, they all understood. We raced down the narrow dirt road leading away from the base camp, engines roaring in protest against the sudden acceleration. But as we cleared the camp, I glanced back at Mauna Loa. The eruption had already begun. Not the explosive type, the one you see in movies. This was different. The volcano seemed to be breathing, like it was slowly, methodically releasing its pent-up fury in waves. The ash cloud was growing thicker, darker, more ominous. The earth around the base camp was starting to shake harder, like it was getting ready to break apart. And then, just as we hit the main road, the blast hit. It wasn't a massive explosion, not in the way you'd expect, but it felt like a shockwave rippling through the air. The trucks swerved as the ground shifted beneath us, and I could hear the engines whining as if they were being torn apart by the force of it. We barely managed to keep control as the ground beneath us started to crack. The road split, and I saw what could only be described as fissures opening up beneath our wheels. There was no choice. I slammed my foot on the gas, praying we wouldn't get swallowed up whole. I don't know how long we drove. It felt like hours. Every time we thought we were out of danger, another tremor hit. Another explosion echoed behind us. We were surrounded by ash, smoke, and the sound of a world coming undone. Lewis was still in the back of the truck, working on the radio, trying to get a signal to emergency services. But it was useless. The whole damn island was cutting off communication. Hannah kept looking out the window, eyes wide, like she expected something to leap out of the darkness. It wasn't like her. She was usually the one telling everyone to calm the hell down. But now we were all running on instinct. We reached a point where we couldn't go any further. The road ahead had been swallowed by a fissure, and the trucks couldn't safely navigate through the cracks in the earth. We stopped, the engines dying down to a low hum. There was a strange silence just for a moment. The eruption raged in the distance, but we were still. "Now what?" Hannah asked, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't have an answer. None of us did. For a moment, we just sat there, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by an island slowly tearing itself apart. The engine of the truck was quiet now, the soft whine of the alternator the only sound in the air. The world outside was a cloud of dust and ash, and even though the eruption had slowed somewhat, I knew this wasn't over. Lewis was still at the back, fiddling with the radio, but we'd all stopped trying to contact the outside world. Nothing was coming through. The ash had killed the signal, and the ground was so unstable that even trying to drive further would have been suicide. Devon was the first to break the silence. "What the hell do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. "We're stuck," Julia said, her voice unusually calm. She wasn't looking at any of us. She was staring ahead like she was trying to figure out the math of this whole situation. I couldn't blame her. I was doing the same. "We're not stuck," it was me again. The words felt hollow as soon as they left my mouth, but I had to say something. I couldn't let the group see me breaking. We find a way out, we just have to think. Chris would have known what to do. That thought hit me like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't help it. I felt the familiar lump rise in my throat. I thought I was past it. I thought I'd learned how to live with the hole he'd left. But now, in the middle of this volcanic hell, it was like all that grief came rushing back in a tidal wave. Hannah saw me hesitate. "You okay?" I didn't want to talk about it, not now, not here. But she wasn't going to let it go. She knew something was off. "I'm fine," I said, forcing the words out, but my voice sounded wrong. "We just need a plan." Lewis turned from the back of the truck, his face grim. "No matter what, we need to get to higher ground. The lava flows, the ash, hell, the air. It's gonna get toxic if we stay down here." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't sure we had much time left. The ground was shaking again, more violently now, as if the entire island was trying to expel its fury all at once. I turned to Devon. "How long before we can move again?" He'd been fiddling with the GPS, trying to map out a route, but his face was pale. I don't know, the roads are pretty much gone. We might be able to head east, but that's about it. Everything's a mess. "Do we have any other options?" Devon didn't look up, just shook his head. "Not unless we want to risk driving right into a lava flow. The only safe route is to climb, and even then, I'm not sure there's any safe place left." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach again, the one that had been growing ever since Chris's death, the uncertainty, the helplessness. Julia leaned forward, breaking my spiral. What if we get to the other side of the island? There's a research station up there. It's a long shot, but it might have supplies. It's our best bet." I could feel the weight of the decision already. It wasn't a perfect plan. Hell, it wasn't even a good one, but it was the only one we had. "We'll take it," I said. Getting moving wasn't easy. The trucks were useless now, and we had no choice but to make the hike. We packed what we could, supplies, water, the few instruments we still had, and started climbing toward the higher ground. The air was thick with ash, and every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. I kept my eyes on the horizon, trying to ignore the gnawing fear in my gut. We were on a ticking clock now. The eruption was still going strong, and with every aftershock I could feel the world around us shifting. I kept thinking about Chris, his laugh, his stupid jokes, the way he always had a plan, no matter what. He never would have let us get this far into the shit without a solid way out. But Chris wasn't here. And I was the one leading this group now. We reached a ridge after an hour of climbing, just far enough to see the other side of the island. I could make out the research station Julia had mentioned in the distance, but it seemed too far. I swallowed hard. The sun had almost completely vanished behind the ash cloud, and everything felt wrong. We need to keep going, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Everyone else agreed, silently. We pressed on, moving in a line, our faces covered with whatever we could find to shield ourselves from the ash. It was like walking through a nightmare. By the time the sun dipped fully beneath the ash cloud, the world around us was bathed in an eerie, orange glow. It was then that I realized this wasn't just an eruption anymore, it was something else. The island was literally coming apart, piece by piece. The air was too thick to breathe properly, and every time I exhaled, the taste of sulfur was sharp in my mouth. I glanced over at Lewis. He looked tired, like he was ready to collapse. "We're almost there," I said, but even I didn't believe it. I didn't know what was ahead of us, but I knew one thing: we were running out of time. The climb became a battle against time. Each step was harder than the last, and the air was thick enough to taste. The ash felt like sandpaper against my skin, scratching and burning, but we had no choice. I glanced over at Hannah, her face pale but determined. She wasn't the most physically fit of the group, but there was something in her eyes now, a fire that hadn't been there before. I think we were all starting to realize how much we depended on each other now. Devon was trailing behind, his backpack bouncing with every step. I knew he was struggling with the weight, but he was trying. "Just a little longer," I said to the group, though I wasn't sure I even believed it. Lewis didn't respond. He was already several steps ahead, his eyes glued to the horizon like he was trying to pinpoint the exact route. It was a futile attempt. The island was too unstable. The roads were gone. The mountains were shifting beneath our feet. And every time we thought we were heading in the right direction, the landscape changed, the ground trembling like it wanted to swallow us whole. But we couldn't stop. We couldn't afford to stop. By the time we reached the base of the ridge that led up to the research station, the world had grown completely dark. The ash cloud had thickened so much that we couldn't even see the stars. The only light came from the occasional flash of red-orange in the sky, a constant reminder that Mauna Loa was still angry, still ripping apart the land beneath us. I could barely make out the outline of the station in the distance, barely hear the murmurs of my team as they trudged behind me. Their exhaustion was palpable. We were all running on fumes. "We can't keep going like this," Devon muttered, voice hoarse. "We need shelter, food, water." "I know," I said, my voice tight. "We'll make it." But as I said it, I didn't feel it. The closer we got to the station, the more it felt like we were walking toward a trap. The island was getting angrier, the ground shaking harder, the air thicker with every breath. The research station was supposed to be our sanctuary, but it felt like our last hope was slipping through our fingers. And then we heard it. A loud crack followed by a rumble. The ground shook and I felt my stomach drop. We stopped dead in our tracks. "What was that?" Hannah whispered, her voice barely audible. It's coming from beneath us," Lewis said, eyes wide with fear. I didn't even have time to respond before the ground beneath us split. It wasn't just a crack, it was like the earth itself had torn open, a massive chasm swallowing everything in its path. We all scrambled back instinctively, but it was too late. A sudden, violent tremor slammed into us, sending us flying. The world tilted, and I felt myself tumbling down the side of the ridge, crashing into rocks and dirt. My head hit something hard, and for a second, everything went black. I don't know how long I was out. When I came to, I was lying in a small ravine, my body aching, my vision blurry. The sound of the eruption was deafening now, like a constant roar in the background. I could barely hear anything over the noise of the earth itself tearing apart. I pushed myself up, panic rising in my chest. "Hannah, Lewis, Devon." There was no response. I scrambled to my feet, trying to steady myself. The ground was still shaking, but I knew I couldn't waste any time. I had to find the others. I heard something. A faint cry. It was coming from the ravine just below me. I didn't hesitate. I bolted down the incline, moving as quickly as my exhausted body would allow, and that's when I saw them. Hannah was lying on the ground, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. Devon was kneeling beside her, trying to stop the bleeding. Lewis was nowhere to be found. "Hannah," I yelled, rushing to her side. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gave me a weak smile. "Told you I wasn't going to die that easily." I tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. The air was thick with ash now, and I was struggling to breathe. "What happened?" I asked. "Lewis, he went further down the ridge," Devon said, his voice tight. "He thought he heard something. He stopped, eyes scanning the dark ravine. I couldn't keep up." The wind picked up, howling through the ravine, and I could see the fear in Devon's eyes. The eruption was no longer distant. It was close, too close. "We need to find him," I said, my voice hoarse. But before anyone could respond, the ground shook again. The whole island was starting to collapse, piece by piece, and I knew, if we didn't get out now, there wouldn't be a way back. I grabbed Hannah's arm, helping her to her feet. Devon followed closely behind, but as we moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that Lewis was already lost. And that Mauna Loa wasn't just trying to kill us. It was hunting us. I didn't wait for any more answers. The air was thick with ash, the ground trembling beneath our feet, and I could feel the heat from the eruption growing stronger with every passing second. If we didn't find Lewis soon, we wouldn't make it out at all. I led the way, my mind racing, trying to calculate the quickest route to where we last saw him. The ravine was narrow, and every step felt like we were racing against time itself. We couldn't afford another misstep. "Lewis," I shouted, my voice hoarse from the ash. "Lewis, where are you?" No answer. The silence was deafening. I turned back to the others. "Stay close, keep your heads down, we move fast, we move now." Devon and Hannah nodded, their faces determined but pale. I could see how much the weight of the situation had drained them, but we had no choice, we had to keep moving. The ground shook again, more violently this time. A crack opened up ahead of us, and I could feel the earth shifting beneath my feet. "Move," I shouted. We all rushed forward, scrambling to avoid the growing chasm, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Lewis wasn't far. I could still hear his voice in my head, always calm in the face of danger. He'd never leave us behind, not without a fight. I pushed ahead, my legs screaming with fatigue, but I couldn't stop now, not when we were this close. And then, I saw him. Lewis. He was standing near the edge of a cliff, his silhouette barely visible in the haze of ash. His back was turned, and I could see that he was staring into the distance, his hands gripping something tightly. "Lewis," I shouted again, this time with more force. He didn't move. I took another step, my heart pounding in my chest. Something was wrong. "Lewis." This time he turned. I saw the look in his eyes, disbelief, terror, and something else I couldn't quite place. He was shaking, his breath ragged. He started, but then his words were lost in the roar of the eruption. I took a step closer. "Lewis, what are you doing? We need to get out of here." But he didn't respond. Instead, he pointed toward the horizon. "Look," he said, his voice barely audible over the chaos. I turned. What I saw nearly knocked the wind out of me. The research station was still there, but now it was surrounded by a massive, glowing river of lava. The ground was melting beneath us, and the sky was filled with a thick, black cloud of smoke. The eruption had escalated beyond anything we could have prepared for. It's too late," Lewis said, his voice cracking. "We can't make it." I shook my head, fighting the despair that was creeping in. "We will make it, we find another way." But Lewis wasn't listening. He stepped back from the edge, his face drawn with a kind of finality that sent a chill through me. "I'm sorry," he whispered. And then, before I could stop him, he turned and bolted into the darkness. I couldn't even process it, I just stood there, frozen. "Lewis," I screamed, but it was too late. The ground beneath my feet trembled violently, and in the distance, I saw a flash of light. Lewis had run right into the heart of the eruption. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. And then, a hand was on my shoulder. It was Hannah. "We have to go," she said softly. "We can't do anything for him now." I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to run after him. I wanted to bring him back. But deep down I knew there was nothing left. "We have to move," Hannah repeated, her voice shaking. I looked at her, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I saw something new in her eyes. Strength. She was right, we couldn't change what had happened, no matter how much we wanted to, but we still had a chance to survive. We still had a chance to make it out. I nodded, my throat tight. "You're right, let's go." We didn't talk as we moved through the ashes. It was like we were all just in survival mode now, just one foot in front of the other, ignoring the chaos that surrounded us. But we were close now, closer than we'd ever been. The station was just ahead, and with it, the hope that we could find shelter, maybe even supplies. But as we reached the clearing, something happened that made me stop dead in my tracks. A flash of light, a massive explosion. The research station was gone. I watched in horror as the entire structure collapsed in on itself, consumed by the eruption. Everything we'd hoped for, gone in an instant. "We are screwed," Devon muttered. But I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. I looked around, trying to focus. The lava was still spreading, but the cliff edge near us had a natural formation. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Get to the cliff," I ordered. "Hurry." We ran, the ground trembled beneath our feet, and the lava was close now. Too close. But we made it, we reached the cliff, just as the first wave of molten rock began to spill down. We were trapped, but at least we weren't in the middle of it. And then, just when I thought it was over, just when I thought we had nothing left, I saw something. A helicopter. It was faint at first, like a speck in the distance, but it was there, and it was coming our way. "We're going to make it," I whispered. And for the first time in days, I believed it. We were airlifted out of there just in time. The helicopter managed to find us on that cliff, and it felt like a miracle. When we finally made it back to civilization, I don't think any of us spoke for a while. The weight of what we'd been through was too much to process. I lost friends in that eruption. Lewis, my best friend, my brother in all but blood, was gone. But we made it. And I'll never forget what we went through. The way we clung to hope even when everything else seemed lost. How we pushed through when we thought we couldn't. We're all scarred in our own way now, but we're still here. And sometimes that's all you need to hold on to. We survived. And that's enough for me.